Hello everyone, welcome back to Wire to Wire Media. I'm your host Alysheba, and today this is going to be our first actual episode. So for the first episode, we have to go big, and we're going to do a video that I've had an idea for a very long time, and that is ranking all the American Horse of the Year winners of the Eclipse Award from 1970 to 2023. And we're going to get started with this. I have a tier list. I'm going to put the tier list in the description box below. Please engage with this video as much as you like. Tell me how trash my tier list was or how good it was. I want to know your own tier list. If anyone wants to, feel free to use the tier list and make your own video about this. So let's get started. This is going to be a bit of a long video, so maybe pop some popcorn and enjoy. And let me know your opinions in the comment section below. Have a nice day. Cue the video. Alright guys, so we're at my laptop now. We're on the website tiermaker.com, and let's start ranking them. Just to let you know, I will be putting this link in the description box below, so if you want to rank yourself, feel free to. You can make a video, anything you want. I'll put this link in the description box still down below. I want to give credit for the idea of this video to Sketchy the Horse Guy. He has a great YouTube channel, and he made one ranking the Breeders' Cup Classic winners. And I thought it was a very good, very nice idea. I mean, all other sports have people doing rankings like this. We should do the same for this beautiful sport. So I did one on Horse of the Years, and this is the American Horse of the Year. And the reason I chose to do from 1970 onwards is because this video will be too long if we take like the horses of the 40s and the 30s. So maybe we could make a part 2. And also specifically 1970 is because in 1970, before 1970, you had the Daily Racing Form, Turf, Sport Digest, and a bunch of like these newspapers vote together on the Horse of the Year. But in 1971, they began doing the Eclipse Awards, which are the famous awards, the trophy that you all know. It's in the thumbnail of this video, and they began giving out those awards. Now it's 1971, but 1971 is going to look weird in the title, so I just included the 1970 Horse of the Year, Fort Marcy, just for continuity. But aside from Fort Marcy, these are all the Eclipse Award winners of the Horse of the Year title. It doesn't make that much of a difference, but I just thought it would make sense to go with that continuity. If you want a part 2, maybe we could do 1930 to 1970, perhaps. We could do that. But for now, we're going to do 1970 to 2023. And I just want to give a couple disclaimers before we get started. So the criteria is a mixed bag. First of all, it's going to be the overall career. It's not just centered around the Horse of the Year season. For example, let's say Knicks Go. Knicks Go won Horse of the Year in 2021. He had a career in 2020, in 2019. I'm encompassing all of that. It's not just on the Horse of the Year season. Also included is going to be the horse's brilliance. For example, some people would argue that Flightline can probably beat most of these. Some people could say Flightline is a better horse than Curlin, meaning if they run around a track, Flightline more likely than not is going to beat Curlin. Curlin, by far and away, has the better career, the better resume, the greater accolades and everything. So it's going to be a bit of a balancing act between them, and it depends. And lastly, it's going to be personal preference, which is obviously it's biased, but everyone who's ranking this is going to have a bias. Otherwise, we'd just be ranking by speed figures, and we don't want to do that. We look at it as an entire package. Another thing to note, D does not mean a bad horse. We are ranking horses of the year. Keep that in mind. All of these are in the top 10% of their crop, the top to 1% of their crop. So we are ranking on like a horse tier list. We're ranking a bunch of A's and above. So when I put a horse in D, that does not mean he's a bad horse. That means he's relatively doesn't match up much to the horses that we have in S tier. And keep in mind, we have horses like Secretariat, Seattle Slew, Forego, Affirmed, and Spectacular Bid. So we have to keep things in perspective. And if we don't put anyone in D and we just dilute the S and A, then the S and A don't mean anything. So we want to keep those reserved for the truly great and exceptional horses. So with those disclaimers out of the way, let's get started. So first up, we have Fort Marcy. Now, Fort Marcy was the champion turf horse and horse of the year in 1970, and he had a very good campaign in 1970. He won the Man of War, the Bowling Green, the United Nations, the Washington D.C. International, which was once at one time was a major race. It was quite an important race. It's now a Grade 3 race that pretty much nobody really cares about. But back then, it was a very important race. It was quite a prestigious race, and he had a very good season. And he'd also won races prior to that. Now, Fort Marcy, this is the thing with turf horses, and it shouldn't be the case, and I don't like that it's the case, but it just is the case that when a turf horse wins Horse of the Year, that's normally more indicative of what the dirt horses were doing. Because if the turf horse wins, that tells you that most likely the dirt horses weren't that good. You have exceptions like Wise Dan and John Henry, but most of the time when a turf horse wins, it's because the dirt horses that year weren't that good. And I think that's the case with Fort Marcy. So for now, I'm going to put him in at C. That might be harsh, but I'm going to put him in at C because, and we can move these around. Next up, we have Ack Ack. Now, Ack Ack was the 1971 Horse of the Year, and he was the champion older male and was also the champion sprint horse. And he was trained by Charlie Whittingham for at age 4 and 5, and mostly based in California. And he won all the big major mile and a quarter, the classic style races at Santa Anita, whether that be the Big Cap, the Gold Cup, the San Antonio. He won all of those races, and he had a pretty good career prior to that as well. And a lot of people will know him from the Ack Ack Stakes at Churchill Downs, and he holds the 5.5 furlong main track record at Del Mar. And he was a very good horse. I don't know too much about him because unfortunately with him we don't have that many replays. But he was a very good horse. I'm gonna put him in at C. I think he was better than Fort Marcy definitely, but we're gonna put him at C. We can move them around later on, and I'm not gonna pretend to be an expert on all of these horses. I'm a very I'll be more familiar with the recent horses. A horse from 1970, I'm going off of other people's opinion on him. Secretariat, obviously, and I'm ranking them in between the tiers as well. So the one closest to the letter is the better horse. So in this case, Ack Ack is better than Fort Marcy. Secretariat, obviously, S, greatest of all time. Two-time Horse of the Year, first one to ever win it as a 2-year-old colt. I mean, what can we say? The track record still lasts to this day. The horses that he beat, including the next one we have here, the horses that he beat, the track records that he set, the legacy that he's left behind, first Triple Crown winner in 25 years. I mean, there's no debate. He's in the S tier. And so does Forego. Forego, 3-time Horse of the Year champion, super versatile colt. And, I mean, we're never going to see another. I mean, we will never see another Secretariat, but it's just as equally impossible to find another Forego in my eyes. Seattle Slew, and I'm just gonna load up all 5 of these. I think all 5 of them belong in the S tier. I'd say this is probably the ranking that I would go with. I think Secretariat, League of his own, you could make a double S tier for him. We have Forego. Seattle Slew, I think, is better than Affirmed. I'd say most people would agree with that, and he became a sire of sires. We're not including that, but it's a nice bonus to have if he had a good stud career and an overall legacy. Affirmed, I'd put him ahead of Spectacular Bid. I think Spectacular Bid is higher on the Blood Horse rankings that they did at the turn of the millennium for the 20th century. They put Spectacular Bid higher than him. I'm not sure how that can be the case because firstly, Affirmed has the head-to-head victory. I know Spectacular Bid, he has the track records. I mean, he has the world record for a mile and a quarter on dirt. But I would still put Affirmed ahead because of the fact that he ran against Alidar. He never beat Seattle Slew. But still, I'd say Affirmed is better than the Bid. But I mean, Spectacular Bid in his 1980 season, he was unstoppable. And I mean, if that safety pin didn't happen, he wins the Belmont. He wins the Triple Crown, even with the safety pin. If the rider, I mean, a lot of people are heavily critical of that ride. If he and I think even the trainer said that, Bud Delp, he said that the horse would have won it either way. The rider made a mistake. Seattle Slew. I mean, he never got back to that Triple Crown form after that horrible end of the 3-year-old season where he lost the swap stakes and he had an illness and the huge fever and everything. But I mean, his Jockey Club Gold Cup, which he lost to Exceller, I think that's his best race, and I think that is one of the greatest races of all time. I have to say, that I've seen, because the amount of grit that he showed, he set the same fractions as Secretariat, and I know Affirmed saddle slip, but that was, and in defeat, I think it was his best performance yet, and I think that truly stamped him as the heart of the champion. That's what we always talk about. I think he had that. I'm gonna put him there. Forego. I mean, 3 consecutive horses of the year, all the Woodwards, Jockey Club Gold Cups, everything that he won, and he could also sprint. Everything, he has to be up there in A tier. Next up, we have John Henry. John Henry, uh, debating between B and A. I think most people would straight away go to A, but bearing in mind that we have a lot of horses and we don't want to over dilute the S and the A tier, so I'm gonna put him in at B for now. Outstanding turf horse, and even could run on the dirt. I mean, he won major green ones. He won the Santa Anita Handicap twice. He won the Jockey Club Gold Cup. He was traveled from east to west. Won the Arlington Million. Won the Oak Tree Turf. I mean, just a proper. This is what we love about geldings. They dance every dance. He did everything. He's not going to win every race. He was an outstanding horse. Chris McCarron says he's one of the best horses he's ever ridden, and he's a dual horse of the year. How can you not have him in? And actually, I'll come back to him, but there's a very good chance that I move him up to A. Next up, we have Conquistador Cielo. Now, I'm not going to pretend like I'm an expert on this horse. He doesn't have that many replays. His Belmont was fantastic. I mean, it was a muddy track. He won by the length of the stretch. That was a fantastic Belmont. And he had a good 3-year-old season. He won the Jim Dandy, the Dwyer. He won the Met. Very good 3-year-old season. He didn't take on many of his elders, which would probably be a critique. So I would say that I'd probably put him in a D for now, and that's not. I mean, keep in mind we are ranking horses of the year. He's in a D, but still very very credible career. And the Belmont, if you haven't watched that Belmont, it was an outstanding Belmont. I mean, he dusted. He absolutely dusted Gato del Sol, the Derby winner in that Belmont. Next up, we have All Along. Now, this is an interesting one because normally I don't like giving these horses the Horse of the Year award when they run all year long in the across the pond, and then they come over for one or two races. But she came over for the Turf Classic and the Washington D.C. International, and she ran in Canada for the Rothmans International. So if you want to count that. But exceptional filly. I mean, won the Arc. She ran all the big races in France, and she was a very, very good filly. She did. The Breeders' Cup wasn't around, but she definitely have won. I'm gonna put her in at C behind Fort Marcy. I think Fort Marcy was probably the better horse. All right. Next up, we have Spendabuck. Spendabuck, the 3-year-old champion for this year, and he ran one of the better Kentucky Derbies I think we have seen in a long, long time. I mean, that Kentucky Derby, it was basically what Bodemeister, it's basically Bodemeister without him fading in the end. It was an outstanding performance. He won by 6 lengths. Obviously missed the Preakness because of the bonus that they had and went to the Jersey Derby. But his Derby, the Derby as well, got him Horse of the Year. That Derby was outstanding. Aside from that, not many accolades. I mean, he did win the Jersey Derby. He had a couple other stakes races, but that Kentucky Derby performance probably is what won him Horse of the Year. I'll put him in at. I'm gonna put him in with Conquistador Cielo. I think because the Derby and the Belmont, I think Spendabuck's Derby was better, so we'll put him ahead of there. Next up, we have Lady Secret. Now, Lady Secret uh, might be a controversial hot take. I think she's a bit overrated. I think people, because it's so much to like. I mean, Secretariat's best offspring. It's a filly taking on the boys. She did beat the boys in the Whitney, and Wayne Lucas, inaugural Breeders' Cup Distaff winner. There's so much to like. I mean, it's a very like attractive package of a horse. So I think people give her a little bit more than she deserves. I think she was a good mare, but I think like horses like Bayakoa, Go for Wand, I think they were probably better than her. But the thing is, she did take on the boys, which you have to give her credit for. She did beat them in the Whitney, and it was a decent field, and she won the inaugural distaff. I'm going to put her in for now. For now, I'm going to put her in behind All Along. I mean, you can't really compare them. It's apples to oranges, but I think pound for pound, surface for surface, All Along was probably the better horse. Next up, we have Ferdinand. Now, Ferdinand won the '86 Kentucky Derby in a masterclass of a ride by Bill Shoemaker from the one hole. I mean, just weaving through fantastic race. I mean, he was quite a big long shot when he won the Derby, but then his following year, he won Horse of the Year, and he had that thrilling stretch duel in the Classic against Alysheba, and he won all the major 10 furlong, 9 furlong races in California for older horses. He beat Alysheba, which is a very impressive act. Um, Now, he did beat an Alysheba, who, Alysheba as a 3-year-old, was a very talented colt. I mean, he won the Derby and the Preakness. We know what happened in the Derby. But he wasn't fully matured. So I think, like, if you look back at the Breeders' Cup Classic, I think Alysheba, if he was a bit more focused, he could have won that. Like, because the blinkers as well. I mean, he sort of hangs when he reaches Ferdinand. But still, you can't take anything away from him. Very good horse. I think he's better than Lady Secret. So we'll put him in there for now. All right, next up we have Alysheba, who got beat by Ferdinand, but went on to have an outstanding 1988 season. He won the Woodward. He won all the major races for older horses. I think he only lost twice that year. He won the Breeders' Cup Classic, and I mean Chris McCarron says that he's the best horse he ever rode, which is very high praise and outstanding horse. His 87 season was very good. He was champion 3-year-old colt, and in the Belmont Stakes, I don't think he would have beat Bet twice, but I think with a slightly better ride, he could have been much closer. He shouldn't have been beaten that badly, and he went out developing into a very, very outstanding horse. I'm gonna put him in. Uh, this is tough. I think I'm gonna put him in at the top of. He's better than John Henry, but do I want to cross him into A? Okay, I think we'll put him in at A for now. That could change. I could bring him back down. Next up, we have Sunday Silence. Now, Sunday Silence, I think, is one of the most underrated horses of the turn of this from the turn of the millennium, and I mean he's known as the Sire of Sires in Japan, and I mean he is fairly rated. Everyone knows that he won the Derby, he won the Belmont, no, he won the Derby, won the Preakness, won the Breeders' Cup Classic. I mean, outstanding performances. The Preakness against Easy Gore, maybe might be a top 5 horse race of all time that I've seen, and not in person, obviously, online. I mean, that stretch duel was just fantastic, and the fact that I think his rival really propels him because Easy Goer, and I mean, I still think there's a possibility that Easy Goer. There's an argument that Easy Goer was better because the figs that he ran, and Easy Goer in '89 after. I mean, that Belmont was outstanding. I think it's the second fastest Belmont ever, and he had an outstanding season throughout 1989. And in the Breeders' Cup Classic for Sunday Silence to beat him, I think the buyer speed figure was crazy high for the Classic. And also, you want to add the legacy that he's had in Japan. He's an A tier. I think he's better than Alysheba. I don't think And that's probably where I'd say he's underrated. I think most people would say Alysheba is the better horse, but I'd say Sunday Silence. I think he's an exceptional horse. Next up, we have Criminal Type. Now, Criminal Type, he had a short 1990 season, but I mean the names that he beat. I mean in the Hollywood Gold Cup, going 10 furlongs, he beat Sunday Silence. Then came back in his literal next start in the Met Mile, beat Easy Goer and beat the champion sprinter Housebuster. I mean, he beat probably the three best dirt horses in the country in that year in like a span of a month and a full season. Won the Pimlico Special, just an outstanding year. Uh, I'll admit Sunday Silence wasn't the same as a 4-year-old, and Easy Goer in that mile he did seem to flatten out. But just those two accolades alone deserve a lot of respect. I think he's better than Lady Secret. He might be. I think pound for pound, like if you just ran them around the track, I think he might beat Ferdinand. But that doesn't feel right. I'm gonna put him behind Ferdinand. Next up, we have Black Tie Affair. So he was the 1991 Horse of the Year, won the Breeders' Cup Classic that year, and had a very good season. I mean, he won the Foster, he won the Elson at Monmouth, he won the Washington Park Handicap, uh, and he had a good season. And he had a good season the year prior. He ran a lot. I mean, he ran 45 times, I think, and he was a very very good horse. I think I'm not sure was he better than Lady Secret or not. I'd say I'd put him in. I think Spendabuck was honestly the better colt, but career and accolades wide, you'd have to go for Black Tie Fair. Next up, we have AP Indy, and this is probably going to be the hottest take of them all. Now, AP Indy, I think the fact that he was he's the sire of sires. I mean, he's in probably every major horse's pedigree by now. I mean, this impact that he's had on the industry as a whole. But his horse of the year season, I mean, he won the Santa Anita Derby. He won. I mean, he missed the Kentucky Derby. Unfortunately, he probably would have won that Derby, because of I think it was a quarter crack, and he missed that. He was. I mean, Orazi was the biggest favorite you'd ever seen, in the Derby. He was the second choice. He won the Peter Pan. He won the Belmont very nicely. But then he lost his next two races, and it was quite disappointing. And the Breeders' Cup Classic, Pleasant Tap and him were the favorite, and besides from them, there wasn't that many horses who you'd say were top tier colts in the Breeders' Cup Classic. I mean, like for example, Criminal Type. The three horses that we just mentioned that he beat were outstanding, and they put a lot to his name. But AP Indy, I mean, his figures were pretty good. I'm going to say I'm going to put him at the end of C. I think actually we'll put him ahead of Black Tie Fair. I think he was a better horse. I mean, actually, he was probably better than Lady Secret. But I don't think I can put him ahead of Criminal Type, because Criminal Type, the horses that he beat, far superior than the ones that AP Indy beat. But yeah, that's where I'm going to put him. That's my hot take. Maybe, I mean, someone can dispute me on that. Next up, we have Kotashan. Now, Kotashan was the turf champion, and he won everything in 1993. He won the Breeders' Cup Turf. He won the Oak Tree, a lot of the Santa Anita races. He was trained by Richard Mandela, shipped over from France, so he changed countries, trainers, acclimate to the new country, which it can never be underestimated. And that was a good year because you had Lure. But the thing is, as I mentioned, Lure, is that this was, I think, a pretty disputed horse of the year, because Bertrando would probably have been the easy winner had Arkang not pulled off that shocker of an upset in the Breeders' Cup Classic. And Lure was super popular. I mean, the running style and everything, and it was a very close one if I remember. So Kotashan, I think. I think we'll put him in here for now. Yeah, I think
That's where I'd put him in. I actually think career-wise he's better than AP Indy, but I think putting him ahead of AP Indy would not be it doesn't make sense. Next up we have Holy Bull. Now Holy Bull had probably one of the best seasons that there's not much better of a season you can have for 1994. He was the Derby favorite. He had a horrible trip. We all know what happened. He missed the rest of the Triple Crown, but what what else he did. He won the Met Mile on Belmont Stakes Day. He won the Dwyer, won the Haskell, won the Travers. The Travers time I remember was a very good time. He won the Woodward. I'm not sure why. Did he just miss the Breeders' Cup Classic, or was there like an injury? And he could have been a very good older horse as well, but unfortunately, uh, he would have. We know the injury that he had, in which basically began the career of the next horse we have coming up. But Holy Bull, very good horse. I think I'm gonna put him in at B. I think that feels right. Yeah, because John Henry was definitely better called. Next up, we have Cigar, and Cigar, no introduction needed. Dual Horse of the Year, and the 1995 season, he was unstoppable. He went unbeaten, the 16 race win streak, and he beat everyone, and he shipped around the country. That's what I like to see, because nowadays, if a Horse of the Year campaign for an older horse, it'll be like they win. Maybe, let's say, for example, a very stereotypical modern day Horse of the Year would be they win either the Dubai World Cup or the Saudi Cup. They'll probably win the Met Mile. They'll win the Whitney, and they'll win the Breeders' Cup Classic. They'll run like 4 races a year. Like, for example, Flightline. He won the Met, he won the Pacific Classic, and he won the Breeders' Cup Classic. That's it. This horse, Cigar, he won the Oaklawn Handicap. He won the Dawn. He won the Massachusetts twice. He won. Shipped to California. He won the Jockey Club Gold Cup twice. The Breeders' Cup Classic. He won the inaugural Dubai World Cup. Shipped across. That's when nowadays trainers, they know what to do because it's been done so many times. But that was the first time that you shipped a horse across the country, and he took on all comers. And in 1995, the only real threat that you had for Horse of the Year would have been Thunder Gulch, and it's a shame that we didn't get to see the matchup between them. His 1996 season was also very good. Probably not as good as the 1995 season, mainly because of the fact that he lost the win streak in the Pacific Classic. But certainly, Cigar, top of A tier, could creep into S tier, but I don't think. Now, with Favorite Trick, the thing is, he didn't run any exceptional bar speed figures. He had the undefeated and the resume of all the Grade 1 wins. But the thing is, Skip Away won the Breeders' Cup Classic that year. He had a very complete resume. And, Favorite Trick, I think it might have been Hype that won him Horse of the Year. But, it's mentioned his figs weren't that great. He never fulfilled that potential on as a 3-year-old. He was a precocious type. Most of them were sprinting. And I don't know. I think he could have been a lot better. I think that's probably the reason why he was kind of a disappointment. I'm gonna put him in. I think Spendebuck was a better. I'm gonna put him in at the end. Honestly, maybe that's controversial. And I think we need to. The C is getting a bit crowded, so we're gonna move these two down here. All right. I'm doing this as I go. Maybe when I come back in post, I'm going to be like, what the hell was I thinking? Skip Away. Outstanding horse. He won. He was the champion 3-year-old colt. Was the older male champion twice. Was Horse of the Year in 1998. And I think there's an argument that he should have been in 1997. Won every. He won every major race. Won the Breeders' Cup Classic. If he had won the 1998 Breeders' Cup Classic, which, the 1998 Breeders' Cup Classic, I don't think we'll ever see a race be assembled like that. That was one of the best fields you had. You had Silver Charm, you had Awesome Again, you had Skip Away, you had Victory Gallop, you had Touch Gold, you had everyone in that race. That was and you. I mean, you had Swale. I mean, Swale. Nobody gave him a chance probably, but I mean, he ran outstanding. I mean, maybe Frankie Dettori. I think he said it multiple times. If you keep him straight, maybe Swale wins that race. I mean, that was and that's probably the best Breeders' Cup Classic field ever assembled. And I don't think you're gonna see one like that for a long time because of how unfrequently these horses run. If he had won that, I think if he'd won that, his legacy would be comparable to Cigar. But because he didn't, do I put him ahead of John Henry? I think he's very underrated because I don't think he was too far behind Cigar. And I think had he won that race, the 1998 Breeders' Cup Classic, because there's no bigger flex than winning that race. I'll put him in at B behind John Henry. But he could definitely move up. When we're done with this, we will reorganize. Charismatic, 1999 champion, won the Derby, won the Preakness, and then the catastrophic injury in the Belmont. I think the emotions probably is what won him Horse of the Year. I mean, he was a good horse. But I mean, yeah, he won 3 times in his career. I mean, and his crop wasn't that great that he beat. I mean, it was a. I mean, you can't just the story was it was too it was a tragic story, and what happened with Chris Antley the following year. So I'd say based on a horse standpoint, I'll put him in around. I think Spend a Buck would have beat him if they ran. I'll put him in here for now. All right, next up with Tiznow. So Tiznow is the horse of the year in the year 2000, and he's the only dual Breeders' Cup Classic winner ever since 1984, and he won the horse of the year title in 2000, and he was the champion 3-year-old colt. Now, the 2000 Breeders' Cup Classic was a very good field. It was probably one of the better fields that we've seen. I mean, it doesn't come close to the 1998 one, but it was a good field. You had Giants Causeway, you had who took to the dirt quite well. You had Captain Steve, you had Peg. I mean, even though he never got back to the Derby, but you still had him. You had Lemon Drop Kid, Albert the Great. It was a good field, and he won. And obviously, the more famous one is the following year's victory. But as a 4-year-old, his 4-year-old season is known to be quite a poor season. He lost the Goodwood. He lost the Woodward. I know that he had a lot of setbacks during that 4-year-old season, but the Breeders' Cup Classic, I mean, it's historic. It's one of the most famous classics you'll ever see. Because he has a dual Breeders' Cup Classic winner, you have to give him respect. But horse-wise, I don't think him and Ferdinand, I don't think there's that much difference. I mean, this is again going to be a hot take. I think because it's the dual Breeders' Cup Classics, I'm gonna put him in. I'm gonna put him in here for now. I think so. That's just. I'm sorry. I'm just not too familiar with Fort Marcy and Ack Ack. Point given. Now this is the horse who I think is the most, maybe one of the most underrated horses of all time, because I think Point Giving is the best horse Bob Baffert has ever trained. Just talking a line, if you run them around the track, I think he beats American Pharaoh. I think he beats Arrogate. I think he wins the Triple Crown in the Kentucky Derby. He just we know what happened. He ran far too fast. And it was a super hard track. I remember. Remember Gary Stevens saying Gary Stevens says he's the best horse he's ever ridden. He won the Preakness. He won the Belmont. I think he got like a 114 bar speed figure of the Belmont. He won by 14 lengths. He got a 111 in the Preakness. He's this. I think it's the third fastest Belmont ever. He won the Haskell, won the Travers. He didn't make it to the Breeders' Cup Classic, but he was the unanimous 3-year-old champion. And and Gary Stevens says he's the best horse never to win a Triple Crown that should have won a Triple Crown. I think I think he's better than California Chrome pound for pound. He's better than I'll have another for sure. Better than Big Brown. Fleet Alex could be comparable to him, but I still think he's better than him. I think this was I mean, he was too big for his own good. I mean, if he was just like a little bit smaller, he would have been a monster. Now that's my personal thing. I'm a huge fan of him. Like the there's a channel called Horse Racing, just horse racing like that, and they uploaded like they upload full broadcasts of races from like the 80s onwards, like 1 hour broadcasts of the Derby, the Preakness, and his was the 2001 Triple Crown season was one of the first ones that I watched. I'm a huge fan of him. I would like to put him in A tier. I'm gonna put him in A tier. I think if he ran against Tiznow, he would have beaten Tiznow. Now I have no doubt about that. Azeri, another filly we have, better than Lady Secret for sure. I mean, she had a far more complete campaign. I mean, she won Horse of the Year as a 6-year-old, I believe, or was she 4? No. She was she won it as a 4. I'm confusing it with the year she ran in the classic. She didn't beat the boys, but I mean, aside from that, very respectable career. She has a better career overall than AP Indy. AP Indy would beat her in a race definitely. Criminal Type would also be. I mean, her career wise, she's probably like behind Ferdinand, but these two would definitely beat her. So I'm gonna put her here for now. All right, next up we have Mineshaft. Now, Mineshaft was the 2003 Horse of the Year, and that wasn't the strongest year of horses, dirt or turf, that we've seen, but he was a very good horse. I mean, I think people, he might be a little bit, his figures were quite good, that for sure, and he beat all the good older males. He didn't run in the classic, which is unfortunate. If he won that, that would be probably a shoe-in for Horse of the Year. But he's a good horse. I would put him on around about. I think we put him in here maybe. All right, next up we have Ghostzapper. Ghostzapper is a pretty easy A tier. Yeah, pretty easy A tier. You could argue. I think he's better than Alysheba. He was an exception. I mean, he was a super horse. I mean, the versatility, the speed, everything that he had, and he's been an outstanding. I mean, he's been a pretty good sire as well in his own right. I mean, the figures that he had. I think he has one of the fastest Breeders' Cup Classic. I mean, the Breeders' Cup Classic, you can't really compare times because of it changing track, but he ran an outstanding race. Uh, and he broke the 130 in a 6 furlong sprint. I mean, he was an outstanding colt. He definitely belongs here. You could argue that he's above Sunday Silence in my eyes. And he beat the next horse that we have is Saint Liam, who is a very good horse. Unfortunately, died early, but I mean he sired Harve De Grace, so he could have had a very good career as a sire. I'm gonna put him in. Him and Tiznow I think are similar. I think he might actually be better than Tiznow, but the dual Breeders' Cup Classics, you have to put him in ahead of them. Invasor, a very talented colt. Everyone knows that. I think he does get a little bit overrated. Okay. All right. So with Invasor, as I was saying, I think he gets a little bit overrated, but I mean, you can't take away his accolades. Breeders' Cup Classic winner, defeated the heavily favored Bernardini, and Bernardini was outstanding in 2006. And he's an Argentine bred. I mean, to ship over and then do so well. I mean, new trainer, new. I mean, he's from the southern hemisphere, which is, I mean, very rare to see that work out so well. I mean, where do we put him? Career wise, he's better than Point Given, but I'll put him ahead of Point Given. I think that's the only thing fair to do. Curlin, outstanding. I mean, a dual horse of the year. Won the classic. I mean, he should have won the second Breeders' Cup Classic. If that race is not on a poly track, he wins that race. And he did everything. I mean, he tried turf at one point. He won the Dubai World Cup, and his 3-year-old season, he was in a good 3-year-old crop. He had street sense and hard spun. Those three, they were just bang, bang, bang. They ran great. I mean, street sense had a very good end of the season, and he dusted him in the classic. Curlin, I put him in 8, but now actually, this is what we're gonna do. I think John Henry moves to A, and Skip Away. Skip Away, I think, is better. I think Curlin could have beaten Skip Away, but Skip Away, because I think that Breeders' Cup Classic, if he had won the 98 Breeders' Cup Classic, I think Skip Away is over here. Because he didn't, and he left on a kind of a disappointing effort. I'm going to put him on over here. And next up, Rachel Alexandra. Rachel Alexandra, I think, is the best mare from this list, at least. Maybe from pre-1970, you could have Regret. Maybe, I mean, there's completely apples to oranges comparison. But Rachel Alexandra, I think, is clearly the best filly we have over here. I'd put her, I think she was better than Tiznow. For Marcy and Ack Ack, look, I no disrespect to them. I don't know that much about them. I mean, we don't have that many replays of their races. So I'm going to put her over here for now. Actually, she could. I mean, Rachel Alexandra, accolades-wise, she's probably, point given 1, 2. She didn't, the matchup that we missed was, of course, her and Zenyatta. But she beat the boys, I mean, multiple times. I mean, she won the Preakness, the Haskell, the Woodward, and the Kentucky Oaks. She won by, 25 lengths or something. Now, she had that 2009 season was as good of a season as you're going to find from a filly or a colt. She definitely belongs. I'd say she actually belongs over here in B. Point given would dust her in a race, though. So that's why I'm putting him ahead. Zenyatta. Get ready for another very hot take. Zenyatta is overrated. Now, if you say that about Zenyatta, most people will assume you're saying it because of the fan club and all the things that goes around her. She's a superstar for sure. But I think that the racing-wise, look, she ran, 3 times on the dirt surface. All of the races in California, aside from those 3, she didn't beat the best. She never ran against Rachel Alexandra. She was known for dodging opponents. And I mean, look, the Breeders' Cup Classic that she won, there is no reason that Gio Ponte would be second in a Breeders' Cup Classic if that race was on dirt. I mean, you had Summer Bird in there, Quality Road. I'm pretty sure, yeah, Quality Road was in there. There's no reason that Gio Ponte is finishing ahead of Quality Road. Actually, no, wait, wasn't that the year? Yeah, I think that was the year Quality Road bucked and didn't run. But you had Summer Bird in there. Summer Bird and Zenyatta could have been a comparable race on the dirt course. But it was at Santa Anita on the poly track, something she did throughout her entire career. She's a good horse. And the thing what's the most surprising is that the reason that it's annoying that she only ran on the poly track is because the Breeders' Cup Classic, the 2010 one, the one that she lost to Blame, I think was her best race ever. That was the best race that she ran. I mean, to come from so far back on a dirt field against a pretty good field. You had Looking at Lucky, you had Blame, and that year Quality Road did run, and that was a good field that she beat. I mean, she lost by a nose, so you move a little bit earlier, and she was way back. If she was just a little bit closer, she wins that race, and she'd become a dual class winner. And if she had won that race, she's definitely, I mean, you could be talking A tier, but I'd put her, I think she's better than Tiznow because of that classic win. And that's what the classic win leaves so much to be desired, because imagine if she had ran on dirt those years. I mean, she was a bit of a late bloomer 4-year-old, but imagine Zenyatta versus Curlin. I mean, imagine that. Imagine her versus Rachel Alexandra, like if she ran in the Woodward. But still, a very good horse. I think she's a bit overrated. I mean, some people would easily be throwing her like around here. That she's not that good. She's very good, but it's just the career wise. I mean, who did she really beat outside of the classic division, that there was an exceptional top tier dirt colt or mare. Next up, Harve De Grace, the 2011 horse of the year. She was the favorite for the Breeders' Cup Classic. She ran all right in that race, but she won the Woodward against the boys, and she had a good season. I think she beat Ginger Punch. I'm pretty sure she beat her. Uh, she's not as good as these. I mean, this was crazy. 3 years in a row, a mare winning. She wasn't as good as these two. Saint Liam, I think she's comparable to Saint Liam. I put her. Actually, no, wait. This is looking way too wrong. She should be around about. She's around here. Saint Liam should be here. I don't know why Saint Liam. That's a bit too high for him. So yeah. Actually, Azeri has had a better career. Yeah, I think that looks good. Next up, we have Wise Dan. Now, Wise Dan, dual horse of the year, turf colt, and I mentioned that thing that when a turf horse wins the horse of the year, it should raise your eyebrows about the dirt divisions. And that was the case. But you had Game On Dude. You had some other good horses. This wasn't a bum dirt division, but I mean it was Mucho Macho Man and Fort Larned who won the classics the year that he won the mile. But I mean, his miles were outstanding. I think the 2012 mile, Animal Kingdom, if he doesn't get stopped, he wins that race. And he probably wouldn't have won Horse of the Year with that. But I mean, such a versatile colt. It was pretty good of a dirt horse. And in 2014, he won the Shadwell Turf. He missed the Breeders' Cup Mile, but he could have won that. I mean, so I'm gonna put him in ahead of Zenyatta. I think Rachel Alexandra, that 3-year-old season, I don't think. I mean, you're never gonna see. I mean, for a colt, that's a very good season. For a filly, I'm gonna put him behind her. Next up, California Chrome. Now, California Chrome, I have a lot of personal attachment to him because I've seen him race twice in person in the Dubai World Cup, and his story. I mean, the 2014 season, the Derby, the Preakness, all the hype. He's a huge, super popular horse. He goes in the Belmont. He does what he does. I mean, it wasn't a good race. I mean, he gets injured. Then he has a pretty lackluster rest of the season. He still ends up winning Horse of the Year. I mean, he won the Hollywood Derby on turf, which is interesting. Then he comes back as a 4-year-old, and he wins the. No, actually, he loses to Shared Belief in their matchup in the San Antonio. And then he comes to the Dubai World Cup, and this was the second Dubai World Cup that I've ever been to. And the field wasn't that good. You had African Story, the defending champion, and he just gets destroyed by Prince Bishop, who comes out of nowhere, huge upset win. And then he's away for the rest of the year. I mean, you don't know what. I mean, there was talks about him maybe going to England. I mean, it looked like he was going to become a bit of a forgotten horse. But then, and it doesn't help that year, Pharaoh comes around and does what he does. I mean, he's the unanimous horse of the year. So everyone completely, I think, at least for me, I forgot about California Chrome. And then next year, 2016, Pharaoh has retired. He's horse of the year campaign is done, and we're sort of looking for who's going to be the next star. I mean, the 3-year-olds, that was the Nyquist, Exaggerator, their 2-year-old crop, and you had Nyquist and Mohayman as a good rivalry, but you didn't really have someone to carry off the work that Chrome had did. But then all of a sudden in January, on YouTube, I was just on YouTube, and the San Pasquale comes up, and it says California Chrome is back, and I was like, bro, I completely forgot that horse existed. And he's in the new gray silks. The ownership had changed, and he wins that race comfortably. And I'm like, okay, that sounds interesting. He's back. I'm not sure what he's gonna do. And then he won a prep race for the Dubai World Cup, I think. Yeah, I'm pretty sure he did. I don't think he went straight into the Dubai World Cup. He won a prep race for that. And then I went to the Dubai World Cup that year, and it was becoming a tradition. We used to go every year, and I hadn't really looked at the card. We were quite late. We only saw the Dubai World Cup, but she shows up on the card. I'm like, no way, he's here. And then there's Froster, and it was a good field. It wasn't the greatest field, and then he just was so impressive in that field. I saw that race live, and it was redemption for the race that he lost last year. And then he just goes on a tear. He wins the San Diego, defeating Dortmund. He wins the Pacific Classic easily, beating Beholder and Dortmund again. Wins the Awesome again. Loses in a thrilling classic to Arrogate. And then, unfortunately, he has a lackluster performance in the Pegasus, but a very special horse to me. I think he's Point Given. I think is a much. I think objectively, Point Given would be him in a race, but he has to be above here. The only thing missing from his resume is the Breeders' Cup Classic. I mean, if you want to count the Triple Crown, but I think that's the thing that leaves a bad mark on his resume is that he never won a Breeders' Cup race. But I mean, to be a horse of the year at 3 and 5, and what a modern horse! I mean, it's so rare. I mean, can you imagine if we have a Kentucky Derby winner race as a 5-year-old and do what he did? I don't think we'll ever see that again. Next up, we have Pharaoh, and an outstanding horse. I mean, what can you say? A Triple Crown winner, breaks the 37-year curse. I mean, and then the Grand Slam. I mean, what a way to go out in the Breeders' Cup Classic. I mean, and you can't write a better story. I mean, to lose the Travers and then go out how he did. Unfortunately, Beholder had to scratch from that race, but that was a good race. He beat Froster many times throughout that year, but he beat Tonalist and he beat Honor Code. That was a good field. It wasn't the best of fields you'll ever see, but I mean, what a race. And he got a massive 120 Bayer Fig for that. And look, I have said it. I think Point Given beats. I think Point Given's the best Bob Baffert horse ever. But I mean, it doesn't make sense to not put him in. He has to go in A simply because of the Triple Crown. Actually, Chrome I think is better. Chrome should be here. Yeah, he has to go in A. He has to go in A. Next up, we have Gunrunner. Gunrunner, an outstanding horse. I mean, his 2017 season was spectacular. He ran monster fig after monster fig, and he took over from Arrogate. And Arrogate, Arrogate, I think would be around here. He would be around here, Arrogate. But Gunrunner against California Chrome, I think he's probably Gunrunner's best. Would beat California Chrome's best. So I'm gonna put him in at here at the top of B. Top of B and A, but I don't want to overfill this. This looks better, and we're gonna do a review at the end. Justify now. Let's talk about it without the controversies. Without the controversies, with Justify, you have 6 races, 4 grade ones. His career best Bayer was a 105. He won the Triple Crown. And at the time, I thought this was a very good 3-year-old crop. Looking back, that 3-year-old crop has produced nothing. I mean, Vino Rosso aside, that 3-year-old crop, it did not age well at all. And the Santa Anita Derby, I think, was his most visually impressive race. The Derby and the Preakness where the weather was the main story. And now, when you add in the controversies, he's been disqualified from the Santa Anita Derby, which technically means he shouldn't be eligible for the Kentucky Derby, which technically means he shouldn't be eligible for the Triple Crown, which technically means he shouldn't have been Horse of the Year. So there's so much. I mean, he's going to be a Triple Crown winner with an asterisk permanently, and it's a sad reality because he's a very talented colt, but I mean, I think this is going to be harsh. I'm going to put him. He's better than Tiznow. I mean, these two, maybe. Zenyatta, he probably beats. I'm going to put him in over here. Yeah, I think Zenyatta, because. And he never ran against his elders. I know it's a lot of stuff out of his control. Well, because there's a potential that I don't think he could be as good as Chrome or Gunrunner. But I think there's a potential he could be in around here. So we're going to put him in and there for now. It's an unfortunate reality, but it is what it is. Bricks and Mortar 2019. Now this year was a year that the dirt older division, Vino Rosso won the classic. And it was a weak classic, I'd say. And again, it was one of those instances where dirt horses weren't that good. I personally wouldn't have voted for Bricks and Mortar to be the horse of the year for this year. I would have said Matoli, because Matoli this year, he was the sprinter, and he was outstanding. And I mean, the reason would be probably because the Met Mile, the 2019 Met Mile, was one of the better fields I've seen in any race. I mean, the Met Mile always is a fantastic field, but that field was so good. And the fact that he won, I would have put Matoli above him. But the reason was that Matoli, I think he had one loss, and this horse was undefeated. And he did everything. But the thing is, he didn't beat a lot because the Breeders' Cup turf, you didn't have much from Europe ship over. I mean, he was beating up Sadler's Joy and United, and Anthony Van Dyke didn't run that well. So it's gonna be harsh, but I think around about, actually no, should be maybe here. I think so. All right, I guess that's it. Authentic 2020 Horse of the Year. Now 2020 is a very weird year. I mean, he won the won a September Kentucky Derby. He beat Tiznow, and then he won the Breeders' Cup Classic, and that Breeders' Cup Classic was a good. The 2020 Breeders' Cup Classic was a good field, but he had, he had the runner almost all of his races. He was a need the lead type. He was a good horse. I mean, he ran a 110 bar fig, in the Breeders' Cup Classic. I'd say put him around about. I think here seems right for him. Next up, we have Knicks Go. Knicks Go and Authentic, I think, are very similar. Knicks Go had a good. I mean, he won the Dirt Mile and the Classic. He was a pretty versatile colt. And his Classic was also good. He had Essential Quality, he had Medina Spirit, but he was just allowed to lope on the lead. It was the race was over from the get go with him in the Breeders' Cup Classic, and he got beat by Life is Good in the Pegasus World Cup. But he's a good horse. I'll put him in there. Next up, we have Flightline. Flightline, talent-wise, he's. I mean, he's. I don't think he belongs in the top tier, but he's right here from a talent perspective. From a career perspective, I'm gonna put him in over here. He's a better horse than American Pharaoh for sure. I mean, he's probably. I mean, he. I think on a talent alone, he's next to Ghostzapper. I think that's his match. But because of the career-wise, only 6 races, I'm gonna put him over here. Actually, American Pharaoh should be ahead of here. Just the career-wise, actually should be here. This is where the talent, I think, kicks in. And then lastly, the most recent of them all, Cody's Wish. Fantastic story, lovely story. But I mean, another scenario. It was a pretty weak bunch of horses. I'm gonna put him in around about here. I think these 3 are very similar. These 3, so we're gonna put them in there. And yeah, that is the tier list. Now I was doing this all as we were going. Didn't have that much time to prepare for it, but I don't think that's too bad of a job that I did. Let me know what you think. American Pharaoh, actually, career-wise, he should be here, accolades-wise, but talent-wise, he's more over here. Actually, this should be swapped. Yeah, so we're doing a bunch of these now. Actually, I think John Henry should be there. Yeah, I think that is the official tier list. This C tier is quite full. Let's try and sort this out a bit. So yeah, that's my tier list. If you guys want to do this, I'm gonna leave a link below for this tier list, and let me know if I completely butchered it or if I did bad. I think I was good because I tried to like balance it out and keep the S tier pretty exclusive. I don't think anyone really has any problems with the S tier. The A tier I think is fine. I think the controversial one is gonna be Zenyatta, P Indy, and Tiznow, probably. Those 3. I think aside from that, it's not too bad. Yeah, I think that's it. And maybe point given shouldn't be as high. I think I explained that. Alright, guys, that's it. Have a nice day. That's it from Wire to Wire Media.